People lost a lot of money on altcoins this year. Let's just face it. And if you're one of the people holding on, hoping that yours might go back up, then this video is for you. Because I have identified not only why alt season never happened, but what we truly need for alt season to actually return. Everyone I see talking about this is getting it wrong. And I want to share my thesis with you. In this video, I'm going to explain what exactly happened to cause the massive altcoin crash and why is everyone's thoughts about the next alt season completely wrong. In order to do better, we have to understand where we messed up. And that's exactly what we're going to do in today's video. So throw a like down below and let's hop in. Now, there's a lot of speculation as to why alt season never happened. Was it October 10th? Was it the market makers getting blown out? Was it Jane Street selling? Was it metals stealing the show? This, that, and the third? I think the answer really is a lot more simple. And it's something that we can actually use to understand when the next alt season is going to come. And that can help us set our expectations realistically. So I want to show you this chart and start it off. This is from Mike Howell, Overlook Cross-Border Capital. Sensitivity to a global liquidity shock. Crypto is the most liquidity sensitive asset out there. You can see that Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana are very sensitive to it, the Bitcoin gold ratio, whereas other stocks, other commodities, gold, silver, they're just not as sensitive. What we saw starting at the end of last year was an inflection in the global liquidity cycle. Now, you're saying to yourself, I already know all of this, but I want to show you guys something. We're not going to look at what happened this cycle. We're going to look at what happened in the last cycle. So have a look at this chart. This shows you, and this is how we're going to figure out when the next alt season comes. This is the last alt season, 2021. Look at this. This is liquidity coming in from all the major central banks, the Fed, China, Japan, Europe, and England. Look at this monstrous wall of liquidity. Look at what happened subsequently afterwards. And this is where we've been. This is the central bank liquidity situation where we've been. Most of the liquidity that's been coming this year has been coming from the private banking sector, not the central banks. They've been putting some in, but not really a whole lot. Mostly been falling on the private banks. So you have the central banks around the world really just pulling money out of the system really up until right now. What this tells us is this is what was needed. We didn't see it. Okay, now there's another component to this because, if you look at this chart, we did have a somewhat normal liquidity cycle. We didn't go up quite as high as the last cycle, you can see, but we did, we kind of went up in the same cadence as the rest of them. There was another massive element to the last alt season that we did not have this time, and it's this right here. This is a chart from Raoul Paul and Julian Biddle over at Real Vision. This is the ISM chart. It measures the business cycle, which I'm sure you've heard of. And when the business cycle expands, it means people feel more wealthy. Small businesses are thriving, and the average person has more money to invest, and they invested in more risky things, like altcoins. Now, in 2021, we can see right now, we also had an explosion in the ISM. We saw it go all the way up to 65, which is well above the neutral point of 50. We were well into expansionary territory. At the same time as we were seeing massive global liquidity. We did not see that this time. We didn't see the business cycle going crazy. We did not see central bank liquidity taking off. And we did not see the global liquidity reach levels of last alt season. So all the KOLs who were saying that, it went to this price last time, so it's going to go to this price this time, they weren't exactly doing their diligence. There's a reason why liquidity was getting sucked out of financial markets, getting sucked out of crypto right around the beginning of Q4 of 2025. And it's not the reason you think. It wasn't because of central banks. It was because of the real economy. I want to show you a brief clip from the liquidity godfather himself, Michael Howell, and then we'll jump into this. Check it out.
But liquidity is inflecting now. And one of the reasons that you're starting to see liquidity inflecting is not because central banks are tightening. It's much more because the real economy is strong. And as the real economy strengthens, it will suck liquidity out of the financial sector to feed a rapacious real economy.
And that's exactly what happened. In the US particularly, we're seeing an explosive growth in the economy due to an AI productivity boom. Similar to the dot-com bubble, when computers allowed us to do more with less, AI is doing the same, but it's doing it on steroids. Everyone now has the power of 10 people, and so the economy is booming. I got a clip here from the chairman of the Rabini Macro Associates, his thoughts on the expanding economy and this productivity surge. This is going to tie it all together. Check it out.
You could have strong GDP growth and having weak labor growth because we're having a productivity revolution. If you're looking, for example, at the revenue, real revenue per worker of S&P 500 firms since the launch of ChatGPT in November 2022, the average has increased for S&P 500 firms by 15% in the last 3 years. So it's almost 5% per year.
And so we have this expanding economy. We have this growth. And so liquidity is getting sucked out to feed that economy. It's getting pulled away from liquidity sensitive assets like crypto and altcoins, and it's going into the real economy. Now, what everyone keeps talking about, this is where we'll plan ahead for the future. What I hear a lot of people saying, you hear Rob Paul talking about this, and this is something that I subscribe to before doing a little more homework, is once we see the business cycle pick up, then that's when alt seasons go crazy. But if we don't have the liquidity, if the real economy is going crazy and we don't see commensurate liquidity to that growth in the economy, then I don't think we're going to see that strong move. Because I want to put these charts side by side. It took both of these factors. It took rising liquidity and rising PMIs, rising ISM to get us to that sweet spot of alt season. If we see liquidity inflecting down while the business cycle is picking up, I don't know if we're going to see that massive alt season. So I don't think that the business cycle alone is going to do it, because even if the average investor feels wealthier, the liquidity just isn't there. But it's not all bad news, because in 2026, the US has a lot of debt to refinance. What that means is that the Fed is going to have to print money and inject it into the financial system in order to pay off its debts. If you look over here, if you look at the Joint Economic Committee monthly debt update, total gross national debt is $38.5 trillion. You look at the federal debt, you can see that it's right at 38 trillion and we're going up only. So their only response is to be able to print more money. They spend more than they earn in tax. What does this mean? The liquidity cycle is a debt refinancing cycle. Typically, debt is termed out over 4 to 5 years. And so around the 4th or 5th year, we see massive liquidity come into markets to settle that debt. We didn't see that happen last year. Typically in the 4th year, they would inject the money and refi the debt. They didn't do that this year. And how much of this debt needs to get refied in 2025? Well, 35%, 34%. And so how much money is that? That's almost $14 trillion that the US needs to refinance before the end of the year. Now, I want to draw your attention to this. This is the US ISM PMI. This is basically the business cycle, the manufacturing PMI, the business cycle. If you zoom in here, we just had the first 2 months of over 50, and you've probably seen this. You've seen it on X, you've seen it on whatever it is, whatever news or AI slop content that they shove at you on X. You've probably seen this. And this is something that I talk about too in my private community, but I give it to them with a grain of salt. And I say that we're seeing this go higher, but we need that liquidity. We need this to happen. We need this to happen. It's not going to get there with the business cycle alone. And so we have to pay attention, and this is how we can help ourselves do better by learning from our past, is by understanding that it takes a combination of liquidity and the business cycle expanding, not just one or the other. The economy is very likely to continue to accelerate, and so that will be a drag on liquidity. But if the Fed starts pushing in tens of trillions of dollars to refinance this debt, well, then that just might tip the scales in our favor. When is that going to happen? I couldn't tell you exactly, but it has to happen sometime in 2026. And so what I'm looking for is I'm looking for that announcement. I'm looking for that update that the Fed is getting ready to print. And the Fed is getting ready to push liquidity into the system to settle this debt. And then as I'll be looking for this to continue to go higher. I'll be looking for the ISM. I'll be looking for the PMI, the business cycle to be going higher at the same time as that liquidity. So don't let these people tell you that we just need the business cycle, because I think it's more than that. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing. We're seeing the business cycle start to gather steam, but crypto is still in the dumps. We're not seeing it yet because the liquidity isn't there. And think back to this chart, the sensitivity to global liquidity. Crypto is very sensitive to liquidity. And it sounds like kind of like a dead horse, kind of like a used up talking point, but it's a talking point because it's real. There's a real connection there. And so I just want you to be able to take this away with you and give yourself a little perspective on what it is we need to see alt season come back, because there's going to be a lot of people who are waiting for alt season to come back so they can recover their gains or try to make money back or whatever it is. And I don't want to see you get duped again. And that's exactly the goal at this channel, to give you the facts, to give you the alpha without all the fluff, without all the empty promises. I just want to share with you the best insights that I can to help you succeed in your crypto goals. And so if you appreciate this video, please subscribe down below. It helps the channel grow. It helps me bring you better content, and God willing, a better camera. And also leave me a comment. Let me know if you learned anything. Do you think that the business cycle is all it takes, or do we also need liquidity too? In either case, thank you for being here. We'll see you in the next video.